Welcome to Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast where we are diving into Wolverine and the X-Men for our very first time ever with episode 7, Wolverine versus the Hulk. I feel like I'm having deja vu. This is JC, and at the time this is airing, I think I'm still opening cards because I have an addiction, and if I'm only posting one video a day, that's giving me a lot of content into 2 months. So.
And I'm Rod. When you're listening to this, you have more information than President Rod about my COVID situation, because either I don't have it or I got it from someone famous, and you know before me. So it could be I'm just tired from the rain or life and the socioeconomic climate, or I finally got it. I don't know. We'll see.
Also, shout out to our buddy Pablo from Deeper Issues Nerdcast, who was on last week, where we talked about Hulk versus Wolverine.
Yeah. And he came on for the wrong episode.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
So if you probably heard it from the last episode, but this one, Wolverine versus Hulk, is supposed to be like the successor to the other one. We'll get into it.
Sort of sequel?
Yeah. Which is, that's like a thing with the Hulk, right? Like, it's always like loosely tied to something. It's kind of like in the MCU, the Edward Norton Hulk movie is like half, like 1 foot in canon and 1 foot, like, if you don't want to count it, you don't have to.
What's funny is I don't think it's intentional. It just kind of keeps happening.
Yeah. It's like they didn't want to make it canon, but then as more writers maybe found ways to make it work, and now Brave New World is like concretely canon, I guess.
Yes, it is.
And the same way with the Ang Lee Hulk movie, only way lesser. Probably not connected, but they do the forest thing at the end, so that when they pick up an Edward Norton in the forest, if you want to connect it, you can. Anyway, that happens in this one. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our bi-weekly podcast where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men animated series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. And along the way, we've completed X-Men Evolution and launched our companion interview show, the Xavier Files. And since Season 2 of X-Men 97 will be dropping in 2026, we're going to dedicate this year to Wolverine and the X-Men.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 15 years ago. There are going to be spoilers, and if you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We are not currently sponsored by or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, Disney Plus, or Hulu in any way.
Don't forget to follow us on social media.
I did radio voice.
Yeah, there you go. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And by now, you guys know better than us if TikTok is still around, because I think we're beyond the first.
No, this would be the week that we'll find out about TikTok. So,
okay. So
you may have a few days left.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know. I guess there's other fish to fry. As far as
I think this goes live on the 31st of March. I could be wrong. So we have a couple days.
Okay, yeah, a few days maybe, unless it gets extended again or whatever. Who knows?
We'll see. Now on to the show. Wow, it's wild when we don't have a guest that we could get through the entire intro in less than 4 minutes. Today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 7, like I said, titled Wolverine vs. Hulk. It aired on February 27th of 2009, currently sits at a 7.9 star rating, is marked as a top-rated episode on IMDb.
It's so funny, because the movie that this is quote-unquote tied into is like a really low rating, or like a full point below this.
6.9 on that one. Yep. So we talked about replays in previous episodes. This one, we get a Kelly MRD heavy replay. Yeah,
so at least it's different. So we're not going to get the two of them rotating back and forth.
Yes, at least we know there are multiple edits to the previously on. So kicks off. There is a snowy night in the wilderness, and you see a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. guys who, at this point, coming off of Hulk versus Wolverine, I thought they were straight up just being murdered off camera because they couldn't show the murder. And you just see them getting picked off like one by one, like a horror movie. So,
based on the way that the movie ended, I thought this was them running away from like one of those fights from Hulk and Wolverine like clashing and that slow-mo thing.
Fair.
No, has nothing. Decades later, probably.
At the very least, a couple years. Yeah. Yep. Two of them look like they're about to get to the chopper. Then the girl gets like pulled at the last second. A killer snowball comes and whacks the chopper. And then you see the jump from the Hulk towards the helicopter, giving the impression of, but poorly veiled, like making it look like it was the Hulk who was doing this to them. So
it got me because my first note was like, oh, they're running away from a monster, because you see like the flash of like white. Mm-hmm. But then it was like, oh, it's the Hulk. They do this a few times.
Yes. So as somebody who is not in the comic book side of stuff, and you heard us talk a bunch about Hulk 181, which was Wolverine's full debut comic issue. The other spot where people may have seen the Wendigo before in the X-Men universe is he is actually one of the bosses in the classic Konami arcade cabinet of that game. There is a big all-white guy with a tail. That's the Wendigo there, too.
That's I thought I knew. I was like, why is this, like, do I remember this character?
Because he has not been in any of our other animated stuff until this episode.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense now. That's where I recognize him from. Because I was like, yeah, why? Because I didn't really, if all the characters I remember from a comic, why would it be this?
Yeah. Yeah, and so at this point in the episode, you did not fully know what was going on from the villain who's taking him out horror standpoint.
Yeah, no, I thought it was either just going to be Hulk or something else. I don't know. Yeah, just some like mystery. I didn't know until they actually said it.
Mm-hmm. Also in pop culture, most recently, and it's like not just because I was also addicted to that card game called MetaZoo, which was all about cryptids. So that was a thing in there. But the horror game Until Dawn revolved around a Wendigo character as well.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. In classic, or I shouldn't say classic, but in North or native indigenous mythology, Wendigo comes from somebody who was suffering to a point where they committed cannibalism.
Oh, wow.
And that's what actually transformed them into the Wendigo. This came out when the Comics Code was originally around, so Marvel wasn't having full-fledged cannibalism listed at that point. It was a more mystical entity rather than, oh, that guy was eating people.
Yeah.
Yep. Jumps into the animated intro. Nothing to say there. We skip this one now because it hasn't changed and it's not going to because it's only one season. Starts off the episode with an exploding motorcycle and Wolverine like wrapped up in tentacles. So we get him mid-battle with the MRD. And again, coming off of last week's Hulk versus Wolverine, where he's murdering soldiers, it's like, older Wolverine has more self-control right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he's very calculated. He is cutting through like laser batons and the fronts of guns, but he's not stabbing these people through the face like he was in, his first encounter with the Hulk. So
I guess they're referencing back to like when they were talking about cornering mutants in like high visible areas or something. So I mean, he's probably older and more reserved, but also like he's aware that he's becoming propaganda or something.
Right, especially after what happened with the failed assassination on Kennedy, where they ended up taking the blame on it. Totally. And then we see Commander Haskett, I believe is his name, returns. He was in that, also in the replay. Like, that was actually very helpful to remind us that is what that soldier looked like. Because we only watched that episode like a month and a half ago, and I already would have forgotten his face. So
yeah, I still forgot him, even though he was in the replay.
Goldfish.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't brought that up in a while. Or have we?
Every single episode. No, we actually haven't. So, a helicopter comes down. You see SHIELD agents who have the dumbest fucking helmets on the planet.
I don't remember.
Some of those helmets were just stupid looking. There is no nice way to describe those. And all these SHIELD troops come out. They disperse. Fury goes over to talk to the commander, tells him to leave. He's kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Listen to you? And then coincidentally, that's when the phone call comes in. And he's like, all right, everybody, MRD, get the fuck out of here.
It's so funny. And I guess it's funny that they had changed Fury to be a black man, but not Sam Jackson in this. So I guess they just committed to the idea, or they're trying to like get everybody, because it was 2000s. I guess they were just trying to get everybody comfortable.
Well, you already had in the comics for the Ultimate Universe, where there was the version of Nick Fury drawn to look like Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
And he had already debuted in the movie in the post-credit sequence at this point, I believe.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Or, actually, yeah, because that was 2008 when that happened.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So he had already debuted in 2 movies at that point, so.
So it's just interesting to think that they had, like, coordinated enough to, to communicate it all.
Yep. Well, again, this was Feige as the producer. So it was definitely a Feige note of make this a thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Particularly, it stood out to me that Logan calls him Nick as opposed to Fury or anything like that. It was like that breeding of familiarity between the two of them. So I dug that as a starting moment for this.
Especially from the Sam Jackson Fury that we know, where like no one calls him Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Director Fury or Fury, but you rarely get a Nick out of anybody.
Wouldn't that be the most disappointing ending to this series ever? Is that Wolverine's the Skrull?
Yes, it would. It absolutely would. Because that also would have been pre-comic Secret Invasion, so that would have just been really disappointing.
Yeah, but even just now, because like the way this Secret Invasion turned out and everything.
Yep. So they go have a coffee together, and Wolverine's like, "Oh, so now you're getting involved," and Fury kind of says something that resonates a little too eerie to today. Is like, "Well, no, that's I can't be on the side of mutants. That's politics." And I'm like, you have the mention of the Hulk and how he's moving through the Canadian Rockies towards the States, and Wolverine is like, no, that's not my problem. Which is totally fair to say after Fury literally just said to him, oh, well, I can't get involved with mutant politics. So it's like, well, why should I help you then? Yeah.
At this point, I was still trying to piece together how this connected with the movie, and I thought, like, is this what he sends him on?
Right. You thought it was like a pseudo prequel kind of scenario?
But no, like in the middle of this, after Fury mentions it's the Hulk, that's when he has the flashback to the fight. I was like, so this is like the prequel part is like an event that is vaguely referenced, not directly tied to the story,
right? But it had matching members of some of the creative team and stuff like that. So they did the loose, like, it's almost like a little bit like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where it's the same world as this other stuff happening, but like, we're not really like doing the continuity nerd, like everything has to line up perfectly scenario.
Like Daredevil and Ninja Turtles.
That's a retcon. That's different.
Yeah. Or I just mean like writers having fun with the connection, because nobody's going to like acknowledge that, right? Because it's rivaling studios or something.
With that, I don't know if they ever did. They may have. You also got to remember, like, pre-1990s, the comic book industry had a lot more fun with itself. Like, you could literally have Superman and Captain America in the same comic book together.
Oh, really?
There is a X-Men versus Teen Titans book. There's several Marvel versus DC books. And at one point, it was the Amalgam universe, which is where they literally combined characters. It was Steve Rogers and Clark Kent combined as one person, Wolverine and Batman, Superboy and Spider-Man. Like, that was a whole partnership between the two studios.
I had no idea.
Publishers, yeah.
That is wild to think about nowadays.
Look up Dark Claw. That is the Wolverine combined with Batman.
Dark Claw. It's interesting.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It screams 1990s, right?
Yeah, no, it looks like Spawn.
It's a very vibe of Spawn, too. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a couple different kinds here, but the first one I clicked on looks like Spawn because he's like hunched over and stuff.
Fury decides to respond by just running off the names of all the members of the X-Men, which I don't think in the modern day that would be as like intimidating. But in 2009, where the internet is still like fresh and you can't research everything to the level of ease that you can today, I think that like really is like, oh, that would scare the shit out of somebody in 2009 if you had all my people's aliases with facial recognition, you know?
Yeah, because they just introduced mutant registration, right? So like,
yes,
he's basically like saying like, I'm going to grant you immunity to this, or the opposite if you don't. There's no like middle ground.
Yeah, and they do the whole like, well, if it's you get me this favor, and it's like mafia blackmail essentially at that point. And if you know, he's like, I need him permanently dealt with, referencing the Hulk.
Yeah, it's like I was kind of surprised that Wolverine wasn't like, so about that. I
can't.
Yeah, I tried. Like,
Yep. Wolverine is up in the mountains. You get a moment with Wolverine and a deer, which again, the only one who has referenced a Wolverine so far has been Evolution.
Oh yeah,
yeah. In the really weird episode with Hydra.
It's also funny because like I grew up with a lot of deer in my area in Indiana, and the deer was surprised that Wolverine snuck up on them, and I don't. I guess that was supposed to signify like how stealth he is. I think it was
both stealth, but also like he's also an animal that it's like animals are comfortable with each other. But he's also a predator, so I have no idea. You see Wolverine find some rubble, and in that rubble, it's specifically claw marks that are going through a piece of it. And then you hear the scream of a beast, which I interpreted that as the Wendigo scream, not the Hulk, who literally is the one who lands in front of Logan at this point.
I didn't even put that together. But yeah. I guess at that point I knew it was the thing I saw at the beginning wasn't Hulk because of the claw marks. I guess I didn't really put together the Hulk was hunting them though.
Right.
So.
Yep. You get a quick mini callback because Fury references this as something that Wolverine does for fun, is fighting people like the Hulk. And then there's the thing that you brought up, especially with the Mr. Sinister origin episode, where it's somebody starts a conversation, they travel hours, if not days, and then they finish the conversation like at the end of it or to themselves later.
Yeah.
Wolverine gets thrown into a tree, and then you get kind of more of the flashbacks of their first last fight with each other. And then a fight breaks out. And I think this is where we see the major difference between the last episode compared to this one. In the last episode, if Wolverine wanted to blind the Hulk, he would have cut him across the eyes and let his gamma heal him up. Here, he throws snow into the Hulk's eyes, and it actually throws him off base for a quick second.
Yeah, everything's because it's TV budget, right? So
TV budget and TV standards and practices.
Yeah, but even in the movie, as much as we kind of dogged on it, they did have the impact of the fight scenes. The fight scenes had a lot of weight, like you could feel the swings and the punches and stuff. And in this, it feels kind of like they're slapping each other around,
Wolverine does something that we actually didn't bring up in the last episode. He copycats what Deadpool did, where he throws a bomb inside of the Hulk's mouth, and it has even less of an effect on this version of the Hulk than what Deadpool did in the previous episode.
Yeah, at first...
Or sorry, it has more of an effect.
Yeah, because it knocks him out for a second. But at first I was like, man, that's kind of brutal, especially for TV, But for some reason, I don't know where I remember this from. If I actually read it, maybe it was something that Mark Ruffalo's Hulk said in a dialogue. But I remember one of the Hulks I saw, or one of the Bruce Banners I've seen, read, or saw in the movie, said that he stuck a gun in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and then spit out bullets as a Hulk.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay.
I want to say that was a Ruffalo one because that was one of the dark things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remembered that, and I was like, oh, this Hulk's gonna be fine. It's just gonna knock him back or something.
Yep. But he passes out and he starts to turn into Banner. You come back, and Wolverine has him in an X-Men hoodie.
It's branding, right?
Yep. And Logan is meditating, which we haven't seen that from this Logan yet, have we?
I don't remember it because we haven't gone to Japan with Logan yet. here.
Or we haven't seen him in his like karate gi inside the institute or anything like that.
Because I feel like anytime they reference Logan finding peace, they either show him going to Japan or flashback of when he was in Japan or something. Like that was his only peace or something.
Yeah. Banner is kind of like telling Logan, he's like, I just wanted to be left alone. But he also doesn't recognize Logan. And that's where like this being a pseudo sequel is, well, they didn't have the full connectivity at this point because Banner would have remembered Logan. It's not like only the Hulk saw Logan. Banner also spent time, and I mean, he would probably remember that Logan stabbed him in the chest, honestly.
I would say I was confused by that because the Hulk mentions a couple times that he remembers Wolverine.
Yeah. So, and maybe that's just because it's a loose sequel, it's not the canon has to be as tight with like, a script supervisor and stuff like that.
But even just like if they weren't connecting it with the movie, the animated movie, like it doesn't seem like it would be absurd to say that Bruce also knew Wolverine. You know what I mean? Like, because if they're fighting, like he's disarmed him a couple times in this fight. So he would have disarmed him back then a couple times too, even if it wasn't the one we saw. I don't know. It was a weird choice to make. That doesn't feel like it needed to be there. Yep.
Yeah, it was. They could have stuck to the previous continuity of the special, and it would have worked just fine there.
Yeah.
He mentions that he is, or a hiker had fallen under this mythical curse and was basically like being seen as like a Bigfoot floating around and things like that. And Fury actually came to Banner to try to solve the problem. And that's where you start to see, he creates this serum because of all the failures of serums he did, but he believes it's going to work because he has actual DNA from this creature that he can utilize. And they literally just dump him out of the helicopter as bait.
Yeah, my note here is Bruce was bait for the other monster because they just take the briefcase from him and then like later just kick him out.
Yeah, they Sparta kicked him.
Oh yeah, this is Sparta.
No, but Banner knows where the cure is. He knows where the copter is. And Logan's like, all right, well, let's get going. Also, we're being tracked right now. So Logan knows that there's something following them at this point.
Yeah, no, the animal connection, right?
Mm-hmm. So they start heading out. Banner cannot keep up with Logan. And then that's where we get the full reveal of the Wendigo. And then Wolverine cuts its nails with his claws.
I was so confused by the initial thing. Because they just show him like clash, and then the claws, I guess, hit the ground. And at first I was like, did Wolverine get his claws clipped? Because that would be surprising.
It would. It would also be really bad for the character because he wouldn't have a way to regenerate those.
Yeah, but the Wendigo, like another creature having his claws clipped, is like, I guess it's still crazy, but like it's not as insane. They just focus on it so much. I thought it was like a much bigger deal than it was.
I mean, I guess that's because we can't show an arm getting chopped off in this. This is the compromise for it. And Banner starts to get some of the Hulk memories, and you find out that his bite is what infected others in there. And then a fight starts.
Yeah, with all it's probably about a dozen. Like,
I think it was 5 of them.
Oh, 5. Like, so. Yeah. It's funny because it has the video game logic because the main Wendigo is white and the other ones are gray.
Yeah.
So you can tell which one's the most powerful one.
You know which one is the boss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Banner, there's a big fight. Don't need to go through individual moves and stuff like that. Banner runs to the copter, and then he falls right at the at the crash site, starts climbing up a tree, and then the main Wendigo catches up with him. Suddenly Wolverine has a torn shirt at this point.
Oh, I didn't even pick that up.
Yep. And then the Wendigos start to go after Banner. They jump into the copter. It starts to get creaky. It falls, and then you literally have a 5-on-1 Wolverine versus these monsters, and they're bum rushing him and just like kicking him while he's down right there.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised to see him get ganged up on like that, or like to be able to, what was I going to say, get slowed down, because we saw, especially if you're connecting it to the animated movie, because like the Hulk like pulverized him and he still got up, and it wasn't until he got like real beat up that he got knocked out and had to wake back up. But then there's a bunch of essentially werewolves, kind of like
big ones, but still they're mythical beasts. Yeah,
kicking him while he's down is like, I feel like he would be able to take this a little bit better, but I don't know. I've also never been like a immortal being beaten up by Wendigos, so
that's accurate. You are not a mutant with healing power being beat up by cryptids. So
arguably, I'm the opposite. Very frail.
As the COVID is taking over your body right now. Yes.
I'm just even without that, even if I turn out to be fine from that, just life in general, just being very frail.
The Hulk emerges. You see that the Hulk has already beaten the shit out of the Wendigo that was in the copter with him. And then there's a big monster fight, but it also kind of happens off camera. Like, it's lots of implied violence rather than actual, like, Hulk murdering these creatures.
Yeah, they're just like, please reference animated movie from earlier. Wolverine
runs to grab the cure, puts it in the gun, and then starts shooting these creatures and knocking them out, essentially.
Fortunately, there's exactly enough vials for the number of creatures.
Hulk sets his attention back at Logan, and Logan has to actually keep shooting these things as he's trying not to get murdered by the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of love for their relationship, like, of the two of them. It's just like, he's the whole like little man and calls him like stupid little man and stuff like that. Like, I kind of dig that for the two of them. It's like, there's these other monsters trying to murder you, and you're like, fuck off, B. I have to kill this thing right now.
Yeah, he can't put it together. Wolverine's trying to save him. Mm-hmm. He does yell a couple times. He's like, I'm on your side, man.
Yep. And then we do have the one animation error of the episode. Wolverine grabs the last 2 vials, and he's going to stab the main Wendigo to transform him back. But as he's doing that, those 2 vials are actually back in his, like, bandolier that he took the time to, stock up and stuff like that.
That's so funny. Yeah, I didn't even notice. Yeah, because he had enough for, like, one each, and then 2 for the last one, right?
Yeah. Then they all start transforming back into their clothes.
That did upset me.
Yep. And I get it, because otherwise you literally would have had a naked woman running around the woods with 5 naked men, too. Yeah. And I guess the concession you have to make is it's a mystical transformation, not a physical transformation. Sure.
But it's cured with a medical solution. Like,
shut up, Rod.
But yeah, that was wild to see the fur turn back into the shirts and stuff. And not only was it wasn't even like a background decision, because it was part of the plot, because Wolverine sees the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo and he's like, oh, S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm like, oh my God.
On the original one is the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, so he is able to interpret that, oh, this was somebody, like, this was your experiment that went wrong, essentially, about Fury. So Logan is pissed. And then suddenly the Hulk just grabs him by the skull and is, like, basically acting like he's going to crush his head.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, makes sense. And the Hulk stuff that's been going on lately, like, there's, like, versions of the Hulk book, which is a lot more similar to, like, a horror story than, like, a superhero story. Like, at one point he basically threatens Hawkeye's life for trying to kill him and stuff like that. Like, it goes dark. So I kind of like the pseudo-bad version of the Hulk, honestly, where it's like, I could crush your skull.
Yeah, just because he feels like it. And is that where Wolverine is like, listen, you just want to be left alone.
My bad. Like, he full-on apologizes.
Yeah.
And that's where he calls him the stupid little man, too. Hulk starts to walk away, transforms back into Banner, has the giant pants on and no shirt, and he really can't remember what's happening at that point. So they end up walking back together with the Shield soldiers, and the copter lands, and Fury is thankful. Logan is like, sorry, I cleaned up your mess, calling him like a creature, and he uses him as he sees fit, basically emphasizes Wolverine being a weapon for him. And Wolverine's reaction is, all right, cool, punches Banner in the face, which we know is going to turn him into the Hulk. Wolverine lands in the distance because that's just what this Wolverine does. He just keeps getting his ass kicked. And it ends with a smile that is essentially like, good luck dealing with that. So, implication that a bunch of SHIELD agents are murdered right now?
Yeah. Didn't he say like Hulk wants to say thanks too?
Yes.
Yeah, my last note was like, yeah, basically Fury and Logan blackmail each other. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, also Hulk wants to say goodbye too. Yeah, because he's like, I won't tell anybody about your experiment. You don't tell anybody about the X-Men. We're good. I guess that's like the cover for this series, X-Men, is how they're going to be able to get away with having the Institute and the Registration Act in the same show.
Right, and not be under, like, getting fully reported and everything like that. So
yet, presumably that goes south at some point.
It's got to at this. The whole premise is like mutant registration is mentioned in the second episode. I mean, that's got to be a narrative point. So, and then the only other note I was able to find is that the pilot, they apparently referenced him being named Barton, which is Clint's last name. But if this is the same world as Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, that wouldn't make sense because Hawkeye, I believe, is in that show.
Okay, well,
so him being a field agent for SHIELD at this time would be weird. Yeah, Chris Cox is the voice of Clint Barton in this, so that. I think that's just a weird coincidence.
I'm going to be so mad if the continuity in this... Not surprised, because it was in 2000s, but so mad if the continuity is off, because we're already... Supposedly, Sabretooth is dead in this universe.
Right.
So we'll see if we see him. And now we already have Hawkeye in this show, but probably not really. But
Hawkeye also wasn't a pilot either, so it would be really random that like one of your best soldiers was a pilot in a helicopter.
Yeah.
So, Rod, what did you think of this one? Because, like I said, this is rated as one of the top episodes of the show.
I like the story better than the Hulk Wolverine movie, but I definitely like the action in the Hulk Wolverine movie better.
Yeah.
So it was fine, but also to be fair, Hulk isn't necessarily one of my favorite characters, and it's no surprise to anyone that Wolverine, although I think he's cool and Hugh Jackman played the perfect Wolverine, is not like my most favorite X-Men.
Yeah.
So it's like fine. This was another part of the story for me, except it was a little bit weirdly out of place because it doesn't directly follow any events of the previous episode.
It doesn't tie into anything. It's very much a bottle episode.
Yeah. So it's funny that it ties. Technically, you're supposed to tie into like a movie that happened earlier or whatever, but it was fine. I guess. Maybe the high rating comes from people who are like Hulk fans. They finally got to see, because usually you get to see like a lot of Hulk fighting.
Yeah. But we also didn't get like the classic references and stuff like that. And I don't know if maybe it's skewing us because we watched Hulk versus right before this in terms of like literal 20 minutes prior kind of scenario. It doesn't feel like a 7-9 to me. So
no, yeah, especially because in this show, I already said I was going to like this show a few times because of like the mystery and stuff, and this, I don't even say it's weak. It's just that this one didn't have the excitement that I had in the other ones of like the ongoing mysteries and the flashback. We didn't even talk to Xavier at all in this one, did we?
No, I mean it literally starts with Logan in the MRD like in mid fight. So there's not even a reference to the Institute here. Yeah,
I mean I guess except for like keeping them secret or whatever.
Just the names getting mentioned, but like we don't see it or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's fine. Unless that's what people liked about it. It was like, oh, we don't like the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's funny because like what I don't like to do is like skew Rod's opinion before we get into it. But I really debated being like, I have barely any notes about this episode. Not even like trivia, but just like the like rundown of the episode was lighter than most episodes. So
not much happened.
Yeah, like. I've shown this in the past. Like, if you my notepad, that is the full episode. It ends at the 1/3 mark on the second page. Like, that never happens with my notes. So,
what about is that your last thoughts there?
Yeah, it's like, it was good. I don't know if it necessarily deserved as high a rating. If you told me that this was a 6.9, the same way that Hulk Versus was a 6.9, I would have believed that. Mm-hmm. So, no.
There you go. No, it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's not that it's even forgettable, because it actually does a decent job of, like, tying into original first appearance of Wolverine, like with the Wendigo and stuff like that, because that is who that character was. The Shield stuff was different, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's also like, if there is no future reference to this, at the very least from Fury popping up in another episode, it feels like a waste of an episode to me.
You think maybe that's why I got a high rating, because they got to see Fury? Maybe that's what it was. Yeah,
and who knows, maybe it's going to be one of those scenarios where it's like it planted like 2 or 3 seeds that they come back to, because we know sometimes like the start of a moment gets like added bonus points to it.
Yeah.
So
what we really needed was at the end for Wolverine to walk up to Sabretooth's grave and weep over it, and then Daniel
or just take a piss on it.
Yeah, little both. No. Like
yeah, after he cries. Yeah. But yeah, so because Rod and I are ahead of a very busy March, we are going to wrap this one up and go into our last recording. So thank you guys for joining us. If you had a good time with this very short episode, make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments to either the YouTube upload, the official Instagram post, or the Spotify upload. I wonder if Apple's ever going to add that to their podcast stuff. Probably not. If you like what you heard, we would appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and technically CastBox. Can't believe that might outlast TikTok.
Oh, God.